Welcome in. I hope you are ready for another great episode here on Has Entered the Chat. Today's guest, Marti Matulis. Most recently, you saw him as Vane on The Mandalorian, but an extensive resume of projects, including Evil, Men in Black 3, Smile, Teen Wolf, Sleepy Hollow, American Horror Story, many, many more. If you want to see his full resume, just go to martimatulis.com. Follow him on Instagram at Marti Matulis. Links will be down below in the description. If you need to listen on the go, this interview is also available for podcast on all major podcast platforms. Lots of good content here, so we'll get right into it. Enjoy Marti Matulis on Has Entered the Chat.
You can see Starlink right there. That's
Yeah.
the Starlink
Is that
modem,
look?
the dish that's up on top of my van. I'm in a Sprinter van right now, so I'm
Oh, cool.
out and about, and it mostly works well unless there's a tree over my head. So that's what I was trying to hope we didn't get stuck with on the next go around if we were going to do it later in the week.
Yeah. Did you park in a field or something?
The best place is the desert. I don't know if you know West Coast, but I usually run from like Pacific Northwest to Southern California. So desert,
Oh, cool.
great internet. Coast, not so great internet.
It's funny. My wife and I just had for our honeymoon. Well, we got married officially in Pennsylvania, like signed the certificate and all that, because to do it out in California would have been very difficult. But we actually had our like little ceremony out in Muir Woods and out off San Fran.
Great. Yeah.
Then literally drove right over to a cruise ship, hopped on a cruise, and did a whole Pacific Northwest cruise. So
Did you get all the way?
That area is amazing. No, we got
around Washington are phenomenal.
Yeah, so the whole way up you could see the coast, which was really cool. Because all you see is mountains and pine trees and all that. So it stopped in. Let me make sure I get the order right. Stopped in Astoria, Oregon.
Yep.
So then we went down to Cannon Beach to see Haystack Rock. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's amazing.
Familiar. Very familiar.
And then it went to Seattle, which was nice. I'm not gonna like say anything bad about Seattle, obviously, in case anybody's listening from Seattle, but it's a very different than Cannon Beach.
Everything else is great.
And then it went to Vancouver, which was beautiful.
Yep.
For a city, and then a day in Victoria. Now, Victoria, we weren't there very long, so we just did some whale watching. We were there for like 6 hours or something, but saw some orcas, some humpbacks. So very beautiful. The whole entire trip was awesome.
So my last route in that area was a motorcycle trip that I rode from Portland up past Seattle and around to I'm going to forget the name of it now. It's like Whidbey Island, Anacortes. Anacortes is the port.
Okay.
And that's where you catch the ferry to go to Orcas Island and the other islands in that chain, just kind of off of Victoria. And just kicking around on a motorcycle and camping for days.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And so what time of year do you do it? Because I know there's a lot of rainy times.
Yeah, spring, summer, fall. If I can avoid it, great, but I'm kind of used to it. So if it rains, it rains.
Because we lucked out. So we went in September and it was dry, I would say, out of the like week. It was dry 5 or 6 days.
Great.
And like
that's phenomenal.
High 60s weather. It was kind of weird, actually. We packed for we thought it was going to be chilly, especially again up the coast, we kind of lucked out with weather, but I mean, just
never know what you're going to get.
I know, but I guess I can see why, I saw the results of all the rain because in Vancouver, we went to a temperate rainforest that's out there. And it's just unlike anything I've ever seen, the entire, green everywhere. You can barely tell there are trees. It's so green.
So gorgeous. Yeah. We can address this in the talk too. I was in LA and got out. I grabbed my dog after there was stuff going on and work wasn't great. Things were tapering off. I'm like, oh, come on, dog. We're going. Grabbed this van. Started building this van up there over time. And, never looked back.
So anytime anybody mentions they have a dog, I have to ask what kind.
Oh man, I lost her last year, so it's a little bittersweet. She was my
sorry to hear
best
that.
little travel buddy. And you said you're recording. I don't know how much editing you do, but feel free to use any of this.
Yeah, totally.
Her name is Bailey. I had her from the time she was 10 weeks, and she made it to a ripe old 13 just last year. She was a mini Aussie lab mix.
Oh my
Kind of
gosh.
heavy on the lab, looked a little like had that shepherd go get them, chase,
Mm-hmm.
run, active. But then the couch
Totally.
potato lab in her was just phenomenal. I'll pull up a photo and point it at the screen so you can check it out. Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of an
I
ideal.
mean, I say I love dogs. Yeah, obviously there's some dogs that I love more than others, but yeah, we have
I understand that.
like a we have a tiny little like she's probably more rat terrier than anything if I had to guess, but we were told she was a mix of Cocker Spaniel, Dachshund, and Jack Russell.
That's fun.
I think they lied a little, but hey, that's and then
okay.
we also have a golden retriever who's just like amazing. Oh my
That was
gosh,
her when we
adorable.
first moved up to Oregon. She was like, "We get to live in this," and was just going nuts, going nuts.
That's a good mix. The Aussie and
It
the
is.
lab.
She was just portable. She's about 40. She aged towards 45. You just scoop her up and move her around. She's a great dog. Loved everything.
And that's why we got the small one first, but then didn't quite suffice. So we got the big one. She's like 60, probably almost 70 pounds. She's too big. I think you're at a good size. You were at a good size there, 40.
Hoist part of the dog at that weight.
Yeah, I'm like deadlifting her every time I try to pick her up, basically. Well, hey, let's get into your career and stuff. I like how you put Vane down there on the.
There was a subtitle thing. I used it.
What was your process like with that? Because I know Star Wars and more specifically Disney is usually very secretive. Did you even know what role you were auditioning for? Like, what'd you know about it?
No, it came through my agent. I looked at it. It sounded like it was the shootout from episode 1, essentially, but with some names and faces altered to protect the innocent.
Sure.
But I don't know how many shows out there right now are doing kind of the Old West shootout thing. So I inquired to my agent. I'm like, could this possibly be? And she's like, well, yeah, because it's the same. They have like a code for all of their shows in the casting business.
That makes
So
sense.
she's like, in that world, so do as you will. And so I assumed enough to put in some pew pew sound effects at the end of the audition, hoping that wouldn't offend or go the wrong direction. And I think it went okay because there was a quick welcome to the show after the audition was sent, and then we were off and running after that.
Oh, cool. So once you got the role, did you find out what the character was going to look like? Because unlike a lot of, I mean, in Star Wars, maybe it's not quite this way, but most shows, you look like you, right? So in your position, you most of the time don't. So like, what did you know about, what he was going to look like, all that stuff? And did they bring you in and change his look after the fact at all?
Well, initially, because my network of professional friends are makeup artists after 20 plus years doing this, like I started putting out the feelers. It's like, does anyone know anything? Good. Have you heard anything? At one point, I think I didn't get the right group because I hadn't worked with them yet. But then at some point they reached out to me, and I said, as I often do, I'm like, if you need anything from me, I know that there are a lot of copies of Marty heads floating around Los Angeles in various shops. If we can like help speed the process, or if I can be involved early on. And she's like, oh, we've already got a copy of your head. We're already working on it. So it happened. Word was spread, and they got a hold of my noggin. And then I think at some point after that, I was told it was this brown Nikto, a la Return of the Jedi skiff guard. So I knew the species that it was going to be, and that they had used this species a couple times on the show as like kind of the biker gang and the whatnot. But up until this, they'd all been rubber pullover masks. So they were kind of excited to have this now as a full glued on prosthetic piece, which then, of course, because they had never seen it as a prosthetic, as a glued on, they wanted to make sure and, check their investment ahead of time. So I got called in to do a makeup test, costume test, a full dog and pony show, which historically has been get all dressed up, get the makeup done, take a few pictures, take it all off. Adios, muchacho. We'll see you on the job. so I was expecting the same, but then once I started getting the makeup finished, we got into wardrobe. They said, okay, so when we're done, we're going to bring you out here and, we'll have Doug take a look at you and there'll be a few phones and, just a couple people around. Doug who? Doug Chang. About 2 inches from my face, just going, yeah. Okay. Yep. Good. Just doing the technical inspection, making sure everything was right. And then the phones started coming out and there were about 11 people standing around with numerous phones. And I was like, this is the audition. This is the character's audition. Like, I was given the job to portray it. Now it's the character's time to make sure that it can do and emote and speak. So I cranked it up to 11, started poking fun at Jon Favreau right away just to make sure we were good. And then, I think based on that, that's why they ended up not killing him off in the first episode, which he was intended to die initially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was supposed to get shot by Grief, and they were going to send off another lackey to go spread the word. But I think they liked how well it moved and how expressive it was. And like I said, I was aiming for the bleachers with the costume test, so I think they wanted to get their money's worth out of him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, and maybe this is a TV versus film thing, and maybe you can even speak to that. In TV, budgets are typically a little bit lower, but so you have a little less or a lot less really CGI. Mm-hmm. But I kind of like that. Like, I like the prosthetics of it, and I know it takes a lot of time and everything like that. But when you're looking at a real person with, essentially all this makeup and whatnot on top of you, rather than just somebody who is in a bubble suit, basically, that they added in later on, I think I don't know. I like the feel of it a little bit better. And again, that's something I feel like maybe sometimes film gets away from a little too much. They're too quick to jump on CGI a lot of times.
Yeah, they are.
Like, what's your opinion on that? Like, how do you feel when you see someone CGI and you're like, that would have been such a good prosthetic?
I'm kind of split depending on the situation. I think yes, I think they jump too quickly to make something full CG just because they have this bag of tricks and they want to play with their toys, and it employs a lot of animators, and that aspect of it is great. But as a guy who came up early days, was like Babylon 5 and Star Trek, and it was all latex appliance prosthetic work.
Sure.
I know that I can work that stuff. I know that when I'm sitting in the makeup chair, if it's a thicker appliance, I'm going to have to go like 30% more to lift the eyebrows up. And, that's my time to apply my part of the craft to their art that they're applying to me. So it could be either thing in any given situation. I think where CG really excels is in enhancing a prosthetic, a practical effect, whether it be like making the eyes move a little bigger or better, or blinks, or something that the prosthetic might not be able to do really well. Because ultimately, I think it should simply inform the character and make the character more believable. So if the prosthetics are always going to read real because they are, and CG, no matter how good it is, like, it's getting so good. But I think it's like exceptionally good and believably good when it is environments and architecture and materials, right? But it doesn't have a soul, and it never will. That's why we should all be terrified of AI. But it's another discussion. Yeah, when it can enhance something to just make the believability a little higher, I think that's great. That's like a real sweet spot for it all.
Yeah, so like the combination of the two, essentially, rather than just going straight CGI. Yeah,
as a fan or as a watcher, like I have no problem, even as an actor inside the thing, if they want to add or enhance, that's great.
I was gonna say, has there been any that you can think of off the top of your head where you felt like that worked really well, where you had on like the prosthetics and everything, and then you went back and watched it later and realized, they actually tweaked this a little bit?
I don't think that's happened too much with the things that I've done, just by virtue of the projects. I think on Evil, there's certainly been a lot of enhancement where there was this kind of this mosquito demon thing, and we had Joel Harlow and his team had built everything practical, knowing full well that you couldn't have like a bunch of fluttering wings and an extending proboscis practically, because you'd be there for months.
Right.
But he built everything practically so that then the CGI guys could scan in great detail and then do their magic with animation and just tie it all together. I thought that worked great.
Oh, that's cool.
Other than that, I think not on me, but I remember on Falling Skies, the way they treated Doug Jones's character, Cochise. I know there was a lot of like enhancement to the eyes and some of the mouth, just to give it a little more. And I thought that worked really well too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, with it being so big and bulky, you essentially, you're just asking for it to be stiff, right? So
Yeah.
you want it to look real, but you don't want it to look like a person inside of a mask. You want it to look like this is an
Right.
actual being, and their their
Yeah.
mouth's not moving like this. Like it's normally, if aliens, I'm sure they do exist somewhere. Again, another topic for another day, but I'm sure if an alien came down here, it would kind of
Come
be.
on. If
Although,
they're everywhere, right?
well, yeah, you've worked on Men in Black, so you already know all about how they're everywhere around us, right?
Wait, where's my neuralizer?
um,
I think that was
do
part
you,
of the concern around Vane initially was also because the Nyctos have no nose, and I don't know if you noticed, but I in fact do.
you do,
So,
yeah.
so they had to build it out so it could go away, which meant they also had to build out the lower lip to meet the upper lip, which also meant that there's a lot of material there. So I think they wanted to make sure it wasn't just going to be a talking puppet.
Right, because I would assume, like in Harry Potter, Voldemort doesn't have a nose, but I think they just CGI'd that thing right off.
Yeah.
That wasn't a prosthetic. So yeah. I mean, inevitably, if you got to hide stuff, you got to hide everything, and that's probably. I mean, you don't have to worry too much about that, right? Do you have any input towards things at all, or you just kind of just let the makeup, special effects makeup artists do their job?
Yep, that's pretty much it. Because
Okay.
I've worked with Joel for so long, and then because I've been in makeups for so long, he and I have a friendship now that we can discuss a little bit of design, and he'll send me a concept art of what he's working on. I'll be like, oh, what are we gonna do about the feet? He's like, I'm already working on it. Like we have a bit of a shortcut as far as like, am I gonna die after 10 hours in this thing? Can we modify this or this? But they're also so aware, it usually comes down to time and budget as to how much they can do for, comfort, or it's usually more around that. I'm just a whiny baby. I want to be comfortable. I want to be comfortable in makeup. So I just
Who could blame you? I'm curious because, obviously you've done a lot of creatures, you know what I mean? Like just, Smile most recently, you're literally called the Monstrosity, which is obviously not so much character, but Vane is a character, you know what I mean? He's not just a creature. He has, intellectual dialogue. He's a full-blown character, and that's kind of what Star Wars allows. Do you prefer one over the other? Do you like playing creepy creatures, or do you like having like a character who has more of, the dialogue?
Definitely the latter. I never once in my life intended to be doing creature suit stuff. As things happen, you fall into a thing, you start meeting people, they start telling other people if you can walk, talk, and chew gum, and you don't fidget in the chair. Like makeup artists like to have reliable people who will help sell their work. And because of that, I think because I had acting chops ahead of this, that helped them see that I was going to do a good job making their makeup look better by moving it well. But so again, I never intended it. I did theater in school. I studied acting. I'm an absolute film buff. I just pick it apart and try to figure out how all the nuts and bolts work. So I very much enjoy being able to build a character, which on Evil, I got to do that with George from the first season, and on Mando, certainly with Vane. There was in the casting, it basically said he's a space pirate and he speaks kind of British. They didn't specify, it just said British. So I leaned heavily into the ish, came up with the best thing I could, kind of worked out some things that I thought would be good for him. And largely that's what we went with. I think there were a few tweaks by Rick just to kind of fine tune things, but even as tightly constructed as their episodes and their seasons were, there was a bit of freedom within the shoot to kind of explore things around the character and do the things that I really love to do, which is find a way into the character.
Was it, I don't want to say intimidating, because I feel like in your profession, it's like you probably don't really get intimidated very easily, but knowing, the Mandalorian is one of the more popular Star Wars projects outside of some of the films. It certainly is on television. Did you know much about it going in? Were you a viewer already? Were you kind of like, what am I getting myself into? Or did you know enough people, that were involved with the project that you were kind of comfortable?
I am an avid Star Wars. Do we call it a fan? I mean, I don't collect, I don't get autographs, but I'm an avid fan from the time the initial movie came out when I was 7. So I
Okay.
was very, very excited about Mandalorian, very enthusiastic watcher. So much so that I was watching the behind the scenes, I think they call it the gallery on Disney Plus. I was listening to the
Right.
roundtable discussions, and at one point, Jon Favreau said, you can't just throw anybody in those things. You got to get an actor. And I was like, he understands. I love him. I have to work with these guys. And can I curse on your show?
Yeah, absolutely.
I shit you not. It was 2 weeks later that I got the audition for the part.
No way.
So
that's wild.
Yeah, I was thrilled. I was thrilled with it. I loved being involved with it. Although every aspect of my training over the last couple of decades has taught me to not get too excited about anything at any given point, because it can all change, or it could be less than you imagined, or better. There's no way to know. So I tried to kind of keep my enthusiasm a bit in check, just so I wouldn't completely nerd out and I could focus on the work and do what I needed to do. But there were moments like getting out onto set and seeing Grogu for the first time. Although I think was he still Baby Yoda? No, he might have had a name by then. The pram, they rolled out his little pram and I just lost it.
That's cool.
I was a nerdy little kid dressed as a 6'6" knobby-faced alien, and I couldn't handle it. I had to go over and talk
how
to
could
him.
you? Yeah, how could you not?
Yeah, he was a button, that guy.
He's adorable, right?
Yeah, he is. He really is. And even like up close, I went in for the technical inspection to kind of see where are the seams, like, do they have to fix his eye? Like he looks great for his age.
Really?
Yeah, he's fantastic. Couldn't believe how cool it looked.
How deep did your fandom go, I guess? So let me preface this question by sharing that, like, I'm the same. Obviously, I've seen all the movies. Sometimes like to forget about the prequels, but
understandable.
I have not seen all of the animated stuff, and I've heard it's really good, especially Clone Wars. Go ahead, lay it on me.
It took me a while. I have a friend. His name is Daniel Sherrill. He's got a podcast. He's an avid movie fan as well, and he kept telling me, he's like, you got to watch Clone Wars, man. I'm like, it's a kid's show. I don't have time. There's so much content. What do you? He's like, dude, just trust me. Just trust me. Watch Clone Wars. So after a couple of fits and starts, I started watching it, and it's a bit intimidating when you're looking at the expanse of 7 seasons of animation. So
I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
I will happily say that you can smell the filler episodes and you can skip them. Just
okay.
You want to go for the story, it is absolutely well worth your time to just kind of, get through it. And there's plenty of stuff you can skip. It's not for lack of quality. It's just that, the stuff that doesn't involve the core storyline, robots are cute, but I don't always need to see them on their own little adventure. It was great. I love Clone Wars. And the further it gets, towards the end of it, if you're any kind of a Star Wars fan and you enjoy the storytelling aspect of it, it's quality. It's really good work. Oh, cool. And then it continues into Rebels. And unfortunately, it seemed like even more of a kid's show for the first half of the season. It's got a little bit of a lighter tone, even a lighter style of animation. But the storytelling is right in line because Dave Filoni is phenomenal.
Okay.
and everyone else. But I think as the leader of the pack on the animation side of things, he put together a couple of really amazing series.
That's what I keep hearing. So I have to make sure I find some time to watch it. And
And before Ahsoka comes out,
right, and if nothing else, because they're actually
TikTok.
they're taking things from Clone Wars and putting them into Mandalorian and making their own, like the dark saber.
Only deepen your appreciation.
Yeah, when I first saw the dark saber, I was like, "What is this thing?" And then I Googled it, and it was like Clone Wars. I was like, "All right."
And everyone who saw the show was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, right.
Numerous
And
times.
so,
They just keep peppering the live action show with little things from the animated show.
do you know?
Watching the thing, you are getting essentially Ahsoka's story underneath this massive Clone Wars thing that was only alluded to, and that was another stroke of genius from Dave Filoni. Is like, bring in this character, she will be our heart as the audience. We will travel with her, we will feel her pain. And when Order 66, it's a deft stroke having this character that now everyone is loving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just from what I've seen, and I can only imagine the Clone Wars stuff, kind of adding to that, and the other characters they've brought into. And on that topic, any chance that you know of, and I don't even know if you would do the voice or anything, but is Vane going to pop up anywhere else, like outside of Mandalorian? Do you know? Have you heard?
I have not heard. I probably couldn't say if I had, but I think I can say that I haven't.
Okay. I mean, I figured if you had heard, I figured you couldn't say, but I have to ask. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. And if I had, I'd probably sit here uncomfortably, thereby kind of confirming without actually confirming. But I can say that not at this stage. Although
it's all about the way you say no.
Exactly. If my eyes are shifting, something's going on. But I will say that I went in for one day of dialogue replacement on the recording stage. They'll typically find something, either an airplane went over, or they have to change a line or add a line or something. So I went in for a few of those things over one day, and the guy running the session was Matthew Woods, the supervising sound editor for Lucasfilm. And because I was aware of him, because I consume the behind the scenes stuff, I need to say hello. I need to work. Hey, Mr. Woods, I was just wondering. I was just wondering. Express my interest in animation, and if there's any opportunity, don't hesitate to call. And oh my god, I would love to voice animation, whether it's Vane or something else. So interest has been expressed, but to date I have not heard a thing yet.
Well, this Star Wars train doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon, so just keep your phone on, I think.
Yep, fair enough.
And on to continue that topic, I mean, like you said with Evil, it's fun. It was funny when you said George, the character George that you got to portray. It's funny because when I was looking at all the people you did on, I say people, but all the different characters you were on Evil, it's like Mosquito Demon, Marriage Demon, Bat Demon, Boop Demon, Archangel Michael, AR Demon, George. I was just like, but because you have, in most cases, you have everything covering your face.
Right.
I'm assuming that opens the door to potentially even play another character on Mandalorian or some other Disney Star Wars production. Again, I'm assuming you can't say.
That possibility was alluded to. I mean, yeah, as you've seen, if you looked up my IMDb, that it'll happen. I think there's a pragmatic aspect to doing that, a financially smart aspect to reusing the same person if he's capable of portraying different characters. They've already got you. They don't have to recast and try to figure out a new person. And so as long as they can successfully hide the face enough to make it seem like a realistic, different character, then it makes sense on that side of things. And then hopefully what I'm bringing to it also helps, make that decision viable for them. Yeah, again, nothing other than the possibility and the distinct, I guess it's just a possibility. The distinct possibility that could happen, and that would be a reasonable thing if it were to happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
All I know,
fingers are crossed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know Vane is coming back. He did fly off, and because it showed in Celebration, I can say that when the Skeleton Crew teaser comes out, we might just find out where he flew off to.
Ooh, I like that. All right, so see, we got some information out of
I
you.
kept it open. Do you hear that, Disney?
Yeah, there was no confirmation.
Maybe.
Yeah, there was
Strong
no
maybe.
confirmation, but if it happens, we'll know why.
Yep.
What's funny to me, not funny, but you have so many recognizable roles. If somebody listening probably knows you from something, you know what I mean? But unlike a lot of people on television and movies, your face isn't always recognizable because it's always covered. Do you like that? Like, do you like being able to attach yourself to all these well-known projects, but not always being recognized in a crowd? Like Ryan Reynolds walks around, everybody knows, hey, there's Ryan Reynolds. You know what I mean? But not everybody's like, hey, that's Vane.
Right. Yeah, I think with Vane, and because it's Star Wars, that's starting to change a little bit. I love my privacy. I'm a solitude guy. I'm sitting in a
Well, I was gonna say you're in a van
I'm in a van. I like to go hide in nature. Like I'm a quiet introvert kid who just happened to find this bizarre, over the top, monster-y career. So yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing. Like I would love more than anything else in this career to morph it into something a little more like Gary Oldman or Daniel Day-Lewis and become recognized as a solid character actor using this face with things on it to give the character some differentiation, not necessarily live forever hidden away as these creepy critters. Fun as they are, there's no denying I've been doing it forever for a reason. It is a good time, and I love the people who create these things that I get to wear. But yeah, I mean, that was always the original intent. My interest has always been in acting, creating characters to tell stories. Oh, sorry. Hang on. We declined that little. Did that just throw everything off? Are we still here?
No, you're good. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. No more phone calls. Yeah. And again, the vagaries around the career, you can't really just be like, I'm going to do this. No, I'm working towards it. I'm hopeful that I can continue doing things, certainly as I'm also aging out of the young and spry monster world. It'd be nice to play a judge who sits in a comfortable chair for a few episodes. I'm down with that too. I'm getting to the age where that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, yeah. I can't imagine, and I'm sure this gets asked I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but with having to wear just everything on top of you, hot, I know for sure shooting it's not quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like mentally, how do you mentally just like stay in it when you're trying to focus, especially when you're playing someone like Vane who has lines that you have to remember, and you can't just be a creature. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the usual thing of doing as much preparation as you can beforehand so you don't have to think about it too much. The patience comes in sitting in the chair, because sometimes that can be anywhere from, usually the short side is an hour 15 to an hour and a half, upwards of, I think the longest was almost 6 hours to get into the makeup. Wow. I think that was a Sleepy Hollow character.
Do you put a movie on or something? Like what? Like, can you watch anything, or do you literally just have to sit there and stare?
No, I've seen some of those time lapses of like Guardians of the Galaxy, and I see like there's a lot of phones and just earbuds when you can have earbuds in, but I don't typically ask to do that. I may have a phone around to check it before I can't anymore for the day, because once you're glued into a hand, like you're cut off from the world for the entire day. But I'm interested enough in the art of what they're doing that I'll try to check out for the first bit when things are just getting glued on and starting. But then maybe halfway through or a little further on, I'll come to and kind of, I get to see it because they're always doing it in a mirror so they can look and get some distance on it and see how their work is coming along. And it's pointing at my face. So as it's coming together, I want to see it, and I want to see when it's glued on. Can I move this? Am I going to have to do that? I start testing it a little bit, not to the extent that they're like, Marty, stop moving, which has happened a couple times. But yeah, that's my time to kind of finalize my side of the preparation, because I can go out, have everything prepared, and if I forget that I have to run a giant silicone forehead, that's gonna diminish my ability to do a good job. So I do use that time to kind of focus and see what's up and prepare that last little leg of the character.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned with your phone, I'm sure once everything's on it nowadays with the phones with the Face ID, that probably doesn't work too well. Does that still work? Because I know sometimes it goes off your eyes.
Nope.
No,
Nope.
okay.
There's like, yeah, eyes, there's that LiDAR scan to go for texture through masks and nope.
Nothing.
No, and when I've got the
I,
big latex fingers, I can't get my code in.
yeah,
So,
you can't. It doesn't like register. You got to get the like those gloves they have that you can actually use your phone when you're wearing them.
right.
I mean, sometimes I wear the wrong
Stylus.
sunglasses and it doesn't recognize my face, so I
Right.
can't imagine a full mask. Well, before I let you go, actually, one more question before I get to the last things, because you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but then we got on Star Wars and I didn't want to get off that train. So you had mentioned, when you got the role, your head essentially was out there floating around and they were able to get it. And
Weird as
that's a
that is.
right. Like I never thought about that, but it makes so much sense. Like, what did you have? Did you have to like go get like a plaster made of your head and just have copies of that made, or like how does that work?
I think people have done this, and maybe if I were a smarter actor, I would have done this. I would have my own positive copy, but that would creep me out. I don't want to carry a copy of my head around either in the van. I could maybe mount it on the
No.
hood with an ornament.
Yeah, right.
No, that's just weird all around. I've worked with so many people who have taken a head cast that I know who I could call who might have one. And the hope then is that, they wouldn't have too much of like a proprietary hold on it to want to make a copy of it. But if the production, let's put it this way, if the production wanted to find one and I found one and they didn't want to let it go, I might try to help facilitate them getting it. But I do not have a copy of my own head, but I do know that there are many out there.
That's just something I never thought of.
Let me know.
Right, just that'd be interesting.
No,
It's something I never thought of. That I mean, it makes a ton of sense, but just things that when you think about it,
it's a weird thing.
It's
I don't know of any other industry or niche where that would be the case.
Right, and you've been part of a ton of horror projects, and that might be the scariest thing, having your own head being carried around with you. Before I let you go, though, I do want to see what kind of, if there's any future projects you want to discuss, or I know you definitely do conventions. I don't know if you just did one or you have one coming up, but I feel like I saw your name pop up on one.
Just did. Yeah, I've Star Wars is finally the property where I've felt like now's the time, because people will probably either know and then seek out that character and want to meet the person who's playing the character and be involved in the Star Wars thing. Now it's a thing. So I've just done the first one in Pennsylvania. There are some more coming up, but I can't think of the next. I think there's maybe a Crypticon coming up. Denver, and I know Minneapolis later in the year. And then there will be others. I just haven't solidified those yet. So that train is starting to roll down the tracks now. And I'm
maybe
sure
that's
once
right.
Let's just say it. Once Skeleton Crew comes out, I'm sure there will be more opportunities to do those things where Vane's visibility might rise a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been to them. They're a lot of fun, and I think that because I think the one you were just at was somewhat near me. Was that in Oaks? Was that this last weekend?
Yeah, Pennsylvania was the first time at that location. Yeah, it was. According to the people who do this regularly, it was a bit slow, but for me, kind of dipping my toe into the world, it was like ideal. It was great. Not too crazy, just enough activity to not overstimulate my little introverted, nerdy brain, but kind of showed me the world of conventions. And it was great. Like, as I said, I grew up with Star Wars. I'm as much of a fan as anyone else, and I like to talk about it and kind of discuss the likes and the dislikes and the guess where they're gonna goes and all that stuff, and then talk about the process as well. So it's a different aspect to it, but it's a lovely way to connect with people.
Yeah, and actually, I don't want to say small, but I'll go the opposite. I'll say the really big ones
Mhm.
aren't as enjoyable to me, at least, as some of the more, again, not small, just like locally put together, I guess might be the better
Yeah.
word. Because you get that, like, you get a little more of, like what you said, there's more, there's always plenty to see, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you get a little more intimate of a setting, I think is a good way
Yeah,
to
and I
put it.
think I can see that happening if I'm on my side, at a table, got people coming up, it's gonna be one at a time, and if there's a lot of people, it's gonna be a short time, and it seems like it
Hmm.
becomes more of a conveyor belt process. Whereas this one, I'd see people that I saw on Saturday, and I'd be like, "Hey, you're back. Well, how's it going?" And you do feel like you're all kinda doing this together, which is nice. It's more personal.
Thanks again to Marty for joining me. I'd like to thank you for listening. Again, follow Marty on Instagram at Marti Matulis. Sure, he will be posting con appearances on his social media. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And again, subscribe. Hit the bell here on YouTube. This way you get notifications when new episodes come out. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on social media so that you get notifications of guest announcements, new episodes, teasers, all kinds of good stuff. Links for everything, including Marty's social media, can be found down below. Again, thank you to Marty. If you're a returning listener or viewer, I appreciate you coming back. If you're a first-time listener or viewer, I thank you for checking us out. I hope you will check out other episodes. Again, just go to the YouTube channel for all episodes, or find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, basically wherever you get your podcasts, we should be there. That'll do it for this episode, and I will see you next time.